In this bulletin, 2 doctors test positive for COVID-19. Ministry narrows down government worker contacts. And food rationing stops. Two doctors at the Lotoka Hospital are the latest COVID-19 patients. They are a 25-year-old female doctor and a 30-year-old male doctor. Permanent Secretary for Health Dr. James Fong says at the moment there is no trace of how they contracted COVID-19.
We are early in our investigation, but at this stage they do not appear to be connected to any of our existing cases or events of interest such as the Tavakumbu funeral. Also, while they did work in the hospital, they did not work in the isolation ward where they would have had interaction with COVID-positive patients. So while we are very early in this investigation, we must treat these cases as instances of community transmission until it is proven otherwise.
The Ministry of Health has narrowed down the number of work contacts for case 113 or the government factory employees from 877 to 791. Permanent Secretary for Health says they have all tested these individuals plus secondary contacts with all 791 testing negative. He says they continue to investigate whether there are other contacts that need to be screened.
While we do not have any positive result yet from the contacts of the two government factories, that could change at any point throughout the 14-day incubation period for the virus. That is why these contacts are all under the home quarantine order that will last 2 weeks from their last contact with case 113.
The Health Ministry is now in talks with the Ministry of Education to reopen schools on the 24th of this month. Permanent Secretary for Health Dr. James Fong says in-class learning is important. However, any decision on children returning to school will be made after assessing the situation on the ground on the 24th.
That judgment depends entirely on the COVID-19 situation at that time. Still, I want parents and students watching to know that getting your children back into the classrooms is an urgent priority for the Ministry of Health. Until such times, parents must keep their children at home. Do not bring them shopping. Do not send them out with friends. Please keep them at home.
The Health Ministry is urging Fijians to restrict border movement or out of their containment zone. Permanent Secretary Dr. James Fong says there are currently 6 active containment areas, which include Suva, Nosori, Lami, Rakiraki, Nandi, and Lotoka. He says they're not even considering lifting these restrictions soon, as they are unclear about the risk posed to the public.
That will require more tests, more screening, and quite simply, more time. The virus may be laying in wait within any of these containment areas. Time is the only strategy that will expose these cases.
The Health Ministry yesterday lifted the lockdown initially implemented for Motuiki Island. These individuals, 3 individuals rather, from Naivembe village on the island had interacted with the 53-year-old woman during the super spreader funeral at Tavakumbu in Lotoka. They have successfully completed their 14-day quarantine and results of their tests are negative.
So the lockdown of the island is lifted. However, as is the case with all our rural and maritime communities, we encourage families on Motuiki to stay where you are, stay at home, limit your movement as far as possible.
Food packs rationing service that was activated during the lockdown period over the weekend has ended. The Health Ministry says further plans for future food distribution service will be advised by the Ministry of Economy tomorrow.
I want to make it clear here. We ran this program for those in the lockdown areas because they could not access supermarkets or shops. With supermarkets and shops opening from the early hours of this morning, our food pack assistance is no longer in place.
More than 60% of Fijian women have been victims of violence and abusive partners, and their vulnerability is heightened during COVID-19 lockdowns. Christiana Uluwai reports the authorities are calling on Fijians to look out for one another, especially vulnerable women during this outbreak.
While staying at home saves lives for women in abusive relationship, The situation is often a living nightmare.
If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please call the National Domestic Violence Helpline number 1560.
Fiji Women Crisis Center coordinator Shamima Ali says there is a surge in calls on the helpline.
From the 19th to the 25th of April, there definitely has been a spike, particularly in Nandi. We have had, and a total of 62 from all our branches.
Ali says there are existing collaborations where help is available to the victims.
The police, main partners, and we have an understanding to contact them, and they have been very helpful in these past 2 weeks.
According to the United Nations, 30% of women on average across the world experience some form of physical or sexual abuse, mostly by an intimate partner before the pandemic. However, this figure doubled in Fiji, where some 64% of women say they had been the target of some form of abuse. Christiana Uluwai, FBC News.
Fijians in containment zones in the Central and Western Divisions are once again encouraged to work on the home gardening initiative. The Agriculture Ministry provides seedling under this initiative to help Fijians grow their own vegetables. Jeshulal reports.
The ultimate aim is to maintain food security in the lockdown and containment zones.
We know that supply has exceeded demand in this particular point in time. There's various reasons for that. Not only that the supply has increased because we have worked very closely with the farmers, but also there is subdued demand due to the particular situation that we have now.
This year, with the current situation we've got, we've decided to actually complement that effort, upscale that effort, and actually go to each of these households, giving them the seed packets so they can utilize the free time that they've currently got.
Dr. Reddy says the COVID-19 pandemic has boosted the supply chain.
Now expanding our seed distribution program that we started last year when the COVID-19 started in Fiji. We have to date distributed 52,000 packages to various households over the last 12 months.
The Agricultural Ministry, with the help of the Fiji Police Force, has distributed more than 52,000 packages of seeds in the last 12 months. Jeshulal, FBC News.
Up ahead, investors interested in Drua and calendar worry for Fiji FA. Stay with us. The Fiji Rugby Union is encouraged with the interest from private investors who are willing to team up with the Fijian Drua for the next Super Rugby season. As part of the requirement for the Drua's inclusion in the world's best competition, they'll need to prove its financial status, which is why they are seeking private capital. FRU is offering a majority ownership of the Drua entity, which will own and operate the team.
Few of the discussion revolves around Australia and New Zealand reaching agreement on the competition for 2022. But the investors are also having direct discussions with both parties, so it's working in progress.
Going on to his 8th year with French rugby club Stade Francais, Waisiana Levu shares his dreams of what he will do after his career. Flying the flag high in Europe, the Ndeumba native says he'll always have Fiji at heart.
That's one of the things I'm looking forward to at the end of my career, to come back and give back to the younger generation about my experience and things that they can improve themselves in the rugby field.
The Fiji Football Association is optimistic they will be able to complete its scheduled competitions before the end of this year. Chief Executive Mohammed Yusuf says if the restrictions goes on until June, the National League in particular can be concluded before November. All other major tournaments can fall in between or after the completion of the league.
Even postponing Digicel Fiji Fact to November, we will be able to finish off with the last round in the first leg and then 7 more rounds in the second, 8 more games by 4 games per week. We should be finishing by October.
Taking a look at the weather, a new trough of low pressure is approaching the group from the west and is expected to gradually move eastwards over Fiji. It will affect the country until tomorrow. That's FBC Morning News. Join us at 7 p.m. for our major bulletin. For news you can trust, get the facts from FBC's TV, radio and digital news at fbcnews.com.fj. Take care and good morning.